When I was 11, my mother bought me a telescope from a novelty store. It was old, about 10 or so years maybe, slightly rusted from time, but never used. The next night, I went out to a small field and used it to gaze into the sky. The moment the reflected lights of the planets shined into my eyes was the moment I knew what I wanted to do. Our twin sister, Venus, so alike and yet more different than we could have ever imagined. Jupiter, the titanic guardian of the inner planets, morphing the system around it. Saturn, with her beautiful and luscious rings that envelop her sky. Mercury, a small and rapid rock that was closer to the light than anyone on Earth could withstand. And most of all, Mars, the red planet, a fearsome war-born neighbor, and what would be the next step on humanity's path to the stars. I knew with just one look that I wanted to help guide us on that path. I've been working at NASA for over 15 years now, and in that time, I've seen dozens of proposals for a manned landing on Mars. Hundreds of people spent weeks at a time discussing the engineering process behind designing a craft capable of carrying out the task of transporting mankind back and forth between the two planets. Millions of dollars poured into projects that never came to light. And for the longest time, the problem was that we simply couldn't feasibly land someone on the planet and then help them return home safely. In part, that was one of the reasons we launched the Mars exploration rovers. If you don't know, I'll go over it briefly. The MER was a mission that involved launching 2 rovers to explore the surface of Mars, and the 2 were named Spirit and Opportunity. They would be the successors to the prior Sojourner rover. The data collected thanks to the MER is invaluable, and at any other time I'd love to divulge them. They were only planned to last 90 days, but the guys back in engineering seriously put in some effort. They lasted longer than they should have after arriving in early 2004. For most of the mission, it wasn't too special. We gathered as much data as we could, had the rovers explore their surroundings, mine up rocks sometimes, nothing too special to write home about unless you're really interested in Martian minerals. Officially, Spirit's mission ended after getting stuck in a sand pit in 2009, losing all power the year later, and the mission declared complete after another year. This is partially true. Spirit really did lose her power after she got stuck. It's partially our fault. She had fallen into a slight dip in the ground, and the risk of falling deeper was huge. We assumed it was a sand pit and acted like we always had, but alas, it wasn't. Upon instructing her to escape, Spirit lost her footing, falling into a deep hole. Her signal strength was heavily weakened by her fall, and the sands of Mars were destined to bury the rover alive. I spent most of the time with Spirit after she fell in. It's strange, yes, but I felt, and still feel, an attachment to the rovers. Seeing her trapped in the dunes of Mars was like watching my daughter trip into a well. Still, she remained operational for nearly 2 months, even if the data she was sending quickly became the same tedious graphics and images that were hampered by time. Most of our crew shifted focus to Opportunity, but I stayed behind with Spirit. The closer she got to the end of her lifespan, the longer we had to wait between responses. The last time we heard from her officially was in late March. We tried for months to communicate, partially at my insistence. Spirit was like my child. I wouldn't let her go so easily. My persistence paid off in the end. In late December, Spirit responded to a data request. From what I could tell, she had somehow fallen even deeper, finding a cave. By some miracle she remained upright, allowing us to maneuver her through the cavern. When we requested an image, she obliged, and 6 minutes later the delay between receiving orders and sending data, thanks to the distance, it arrived, and what we saw was baffling, to say the least. It was a perfectly vertical wall, with strange unknown symbols carved into its surface. There are many possible explanations for this, so nobody on the crew jumped to an extraterrestrial as the cause. We ordered Spirit to get closer and take another photo. It never arrived. Spirit stopped responding once again, likely due to her dying batteries. I thought that was it for her. The image was classified to keep the public from freaking out, at least until we determined an explanation behind the sigils in the wall. Shortly after that, Spirit's mission was declared complete. And then, out of the blue, she sent an image. This was puzzling. It was the only thing she had sent, despite the hundreds of requests for other forms of data and status updates after the last picture. My guess is that Spirit had actually received her previous order for a photograph, but for whatever reason, was unable to send it back until that point. Due to the circumstances, barely anyone was made aware of the incident. It was just me and a few others who examined the picture. It was pitch black. You couldn't make out anything even if you tried. That is, until someone suggested brightening it. It was still near total darkness, but in the corner, there were two very distinct red dots, aimed directly at the camera. We couldn't shake how much they looked like eyes. Apart from that, the cavern was slightly visible, appearing to be a vastly different location than we had last seen. Spirit must have moved significantly, but where to and more importantly how is something I'm still not entirely sure of. Most of the attention was drawn to the red glowing dots. This wasn't necessarily proof of anything. There are several possible answers for what they could be. The camera might have detected large pieces of dust, and due to the quality loss of brightening, it appeared much rounder than it really was. It could be a reflection of the rover's lights on the cave wall. That's the answer we settled on, but I knew something was off. I think my colleagues did too. That was the last we've received from Spirit. We stopped trying to communicate with her. We had more important things to put our focus on, namely the remaining rover, Opportunity, and Curiosity, who was to be launched in November. I've always considered Opportunity and Spirit to be twins, brother and sister with the shared purpose of propelling humanity into the future, taking after their eldest brother Sojourner. I was still studying when Sojourner was active, but I can try and dig around for information on him sometime later. I've heard he has some interesting findings, but I'm getting off track. Opportunity is much the star of the MER. He lasted for over 15 years on the harsh Martian landscape, powering through dust, rock, and time with the passionate hearts of 7 billion people behind him. Oppie, as he came to be called, was, for a few months, the only active rover until Curiosity's arrival in 2012. Although not as focused on the subject of life as his younger sibling, he still provided invaluable information. I've never been more proud of a little rover in my life than I was of this little guy. Without his twin, Oppie had to function alone, even if only for a short period. Still, I didn't want him to feel alone without Spirit. I'd dedicate her memory to him. Oppie's mission officially came to a halt 2 years ago. A severe dust storm had sent him into hibernation, a sleep from which he would never awake. Last February, we stopped trying to awaken him and bid farewell to Opportunity. That's the official story, and unlike Spirit, it's much further from the truth, and there's a damn good reason for keeping it secret. Although he was supposed to be in hibernation during the storm, Oppie would occasionally send back information about odd, seemingly volcanic rocks. This was obviously startling, and not just because the rover was somehow operating during hibernation. Where he was stationed, Oppie wasn't in range of any volcanic fixtures. The only way he could be sending this data was if he somehow reactivated during the storm, and if a group of volcanic rocks just so happened to have been pushed by the winds close enough for him to reach. Needless to say, the chances of that occurring are slim to none. Knowing the media panic that'd ensue from the implications, all of this was quickly classified. Opportunity would, officially, be declared as inoperative and would remain that way until further notice. Unofficially, research continued. The same team that worked with Spirit after she fell into that cave was assembled to investigate this mystery, myself included. Oppie would still carry out the tasks instructed of him, and as such, an image was requested. In response, he sent back an almost natural photo of the Martian landscape. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary, except for the rocks. Lying on the ground next to his wheels were 6 perfectly cut hexagonal prisms made out of what looked to be obsidian. Lowering the camera and taking another photo, markings were discovered on the objects. Unnervingly, they were all facing the screen, and perfectly aligned at that. The markings on the objects were strange, to say the least. They resembled hieroglyphics in a way, yet they remained distinctly different. What felt especially eerie was that they resembled the sigils Spirit had found, years prior. Scanning them gave us the exact same data Oppie was sending us during the storm. Normally, in a scientific situation, we try to take things logically. The reason we don't accept aliens did it as a solution to every mystery we encounter in space is that, in science, our goal is to find a natural explanation behind all observed phenomena. And in all situations we find ourselves in, there is one. Our goal is to find it. There was nothing explainable nor natural about this. Still, assuming we had just discovered alien life, they should have left traces of something when interacting with objects. That would have been picked up by Oppie during his scans. If Opportunity was the one who placed the objects, that also doesn't make sense. The rocks weren't there before the storm, and the wheels are much too slow for Oppie to have somehow found them and returned to his location. Besides that, why would he behave in this way? He had to have been instructed to do this by something we were somehow unable to detect. Something that came during the storm. After a short debate, we instructed Oppie to pick up each prism and photograph it individually in hopes of possibly understanding what they were supposed to be. Multiple theories started up in the control room, quickly diverting attention. Assuming it was genuinely alien life, it is way too deliberate to have been an accident. Whatever alien life did this would be at least moderately intelligent. Maybe it was trying to greet us. But if that's the case, why like this? If it's aware we're watching, then why doesn't it show itself? The debates continued as Opportunity sent back photographs. Taking a break from the conversation, I briefly looked at the screen and immediately froze. The most recent image was of the second prism, almost nothing unusual about that. But in the very far distance of the screen stood something. It was almost impossible to see behind all of the dust. I couldn't make out much of anything regarding the figure's appearance. I chalked it up to maybe being one of the other prisms, and the angle had made it appear further away. The third image disproved that. The figure was visibly closer this time, but still difficult to make out. From where it was shot, it was obvious whatever I was looking at was humanoid. It was rather short, about the size of a teenager. I took a moment, then waited for the fourth image. When it arrived, I nearly took a step back. At that point, it was clear that whatever this was, it had to be some sort of creature, and it was making its way toward Oppie. They were much easier to see, judging by the sudden halt and chatter around me. They were hunched over, standing on jagged and clawed feet. A glimmer of red could be seen glaring at the camera. The same crimson shade captured by Spirit in her last photograph. Equally red teeth could be seen in the beast's maddened grin, lined around a long snout. It had several large protrusions emerging from the back of its head, almost like tentacles in the form of hair. Hanging above its head were two very long tails, seemingly longer than the creature was tall, sharp thorns covering them like razor wire. I wasn't afraid of its appearance. I was afraid that whatever this thing was, it was walking on the surface of Mars with apparently no issue. I was afraid of the malice in its eyes. I can't describe what it felt like. They pierced down into my soul, racking my heart with fear until it pounded uncontrollably, as if it was ready to burst from its cage. It didn't feel like it was looking at the rover, nor the camera. It felt like it was looking at us. It couldn't be. It couldn't know. Even if it was aware the rover could see, it couldn't possibly know what Oppie's purpose is, and it certainly couldn't predict when the images are taken. The data transmission takes 6 minutes total, from when the order is sent to when it is received, and my heart stopped. The images were 3 minutes old. We were looking at the past. The creature was already at the rover. Before I could even react to the realization, the screen flickered to what should have shown the 5th prism. Instead, the camera was tilted over to face the creature, whose claws were wrapped around Oppie's body. Animosity filled its scornful gaze. The crimson red that outlined its eyes and teeth took on a new hue, the same as the red rocks of Mars. From the height of the photo, the creature must have been lifting Oppie. The 6th image was never received. Opportunity never responded to any of our communication attempts after it sent that picture. As far as anyone here knows, the creature destroyed the rover, leaving Curiosity alone on the barren surface. Obviously, it was very quickly decided that none of this would become public. Internally, we were a mess afterwards. It was undeniable proof of alien life, which we had searched so long to find, and yet while nobody could say why, it was more unnerving than exciting. We expected microbes, not an animal, let alone an intelligent one. That's what gets to me the most. The way its eyes locked into mine, there's nothing I can say that could possibly describe the feeling of abject hatred in that beast's eyes. That wasn't instinct, it was malice. It hated humanity, and it hated Earth. And it wanted us to know that. Despite how horrifying the ordeal felt, I kept my composure as best I could and assisted in the cover-up. I don't think I abandoned my morals, nor do I think that NASA did the wrong thing by hiding this. Hell, even now, I don't know if I'm doing the right thing by telling you all. The discovery of life on another planet should be one of excitement, not dread. That's what I wanted people to feel when we made the announcement. And so, the true fate of Opportunity remained in the shadows. I know a few people who tried to go public about it, posting online, telling friends and family. Nobody believed them, and NASA knew that. No, they're not dead in a ditch somewhere. There's not a lot of people with the education and expertise necessitated for our means, and besides, it'd be more suspicious if they did end up in a ditch. They did get one hell of a pay cut though, that's for sure. So, why am I finally telling you all about this? Sure, there's no risk to my life, and hey, they can cut my pay in half and I'll still be making more than the average family. But I supported them, helped them cover this, and I even sympathize with their reasoning. Well, it's because of what I saw last week. Due to the quarantine, I've been spending all of my time here at base, monitoring Curiosity's search. Everything was going well, nothing out of the ordinary until that Saturday. It was almost midnight when I noticed it. There it was, in the most recent photograph, just sitting there, tauntingly. 6 hexagonal prisms, each turned towards Curiosity. The creature I had seen, that we had all seen, and chose to deny it, sat atop a large rock, glaring into the camera with a tilted head. Its eyes and muzzle burrowed into a mocking expression. I could almost hear it sneer. Most everyone else was asleep or had left, so the decisions came down to me. I just stood there, dumbfounded. This couldn't be the same creature, it just couldn't be. Curiosity is thousands of kilometers from Opportunity. How could it have traveled that distance on foot? I knew by all logic it had to be a different member of the same species, but something in its eyes, the purely crimson dots, it told a different story. They were the same. I saw them through Spirit's eyes. I saw them through Oppie's. Hesitating and shaking, I sent a photo request and waited the 6 long minutes for a response. I was greeted by the sight of the creature, grinning maniacally. It was gesturing to the ground beneath its feet. Standing there were the prisms, the clearest shot of all 6 at once. The sigils inscribed on their faces as visible as the hatred in the beast's soul. I've still yet to decode what they mean. I requested one more image on the off chance that Curiosity was spared destruction. What I saw is why I've finally broken my vow of secrecy. It's why I'm telling you all this. Hell, it's why I might spill everything I can find. Knowing this thing existed on the red planet, how intelligent it was, and how scornful of man it seemed to be, that alone horrified me to want to forget the beast. It had crawled from the depths of insanity, the core of the planet of war itself. One single soldier, capable of tearing through the strongest alloys we could construct. Just one. And in the last photo, there were thousands,